Neuest was another planet colonized by early human expeditions. Its lower gravity caused the colonists to become taller and thinner, and for a while this was the only major difference between them and basal humanity. However, Neuest's star eventually began shooting out massive solar flares toward the planet. This affected the colonists with solar radiation and caused countless mutations. One of these mutations was an evolutionary throwback called atavism, causing their children to be born with small tails. Over time, these tails became a sort of fashion statement, a desired trait many believed was tied with good luck. Because of this, many parents began artificially adding tails to their own children. Over time, the tails became more elaborate and more varied. Some were short and curly, others were long and fluffy. However, the most popular tail was of the prehensile variety, for its extra pragmatic use. Of course, other modifications were made as well. Due to how tall they had become in the low gravity, farming became much more difficult. After all, having to bend down to pick plants can be challenging when you stand nearly 8 feet from the ground. To counteract this, they engineered fruit-bearing trees that carried vegetables, like carrots or potatoes for example. And since nearly half the planet's population was directly involved in agriculture, it seemed appropriate to make further changes to the body plan that would help make their livelihoods easier. And so, people were modified to have extra long ring and pinky fingers that would be used to reach into the trees and pull down branches, and with the advent of larger fruits, like pumpkin and melon trees, it became increasingly important to defend their heads from falling plants. To help with this, they developed bony plates lining their scalps that would do just that. This species was eventually given the name of the Botanists, to fit their tree-based agriculture and body plan. But the botanists weren't finished yet. Similar to their vegetable trees, they made their livestock into towering tree-like life forms, which bore fruit-shaped slabs of meat. This meant that a single animal could produce more food over a longer period of time, instead of only after they had been slaughtered. These new organisms, known as thickets, also brought in new jobs, with shepherds moving massive herds across the countryside. Over time, the botanists started making their own expeditions across the galaxy, one of which brought them to a planet called Orai. Orai had an extremely severe axial tilt, meaning that the summers were brutally hot and the winters equally cold. To combat this, the colonists gave themselves long snouts that would make cold air warmer and hot air cooler as they breathed it in. They also adapted to having seasonal dimorphism, growing thick hides and a layer of blubber in the winter that they would shed by the beginning of summer. However, partially adapting to both seasons effectively means you're a little uncomfortable all the time, and so other groups emerged that fully adapted to a single season and migrated with it. These groups were known as seasonal nomads, while their stationary counterparts were dubbed the all-years. Many nomads travel by foot, but the more advanced groups took different measures. They bred the thickets to become even larger, truly epic in proportion, big enough to carry houses and other buildings on their backs. Many were so big, in fact, that they could carry entire neighborhoods. These creatures were called blockwalkers, and at first, feeding them was a very difficult task. Having to stop every so often so the walker could feed could take entire days out of the journey. To solve this, they developed a rather clever solution. Similar to a queen bee, the walker would lay thousands of eggs at a time that contained drones, small bird-like creatures that would fly out in massive swarms to collect food for their walker. However, between the massive footprints left in a walker's wake and the damage caused by foraging block flocks, the all-years grew to hate the nomads, and would do anything in their power to keep them from going through their settlements. Because of this, block walkers were often fitted out with armor and sometimes even weaponry, in the event that they might have to fight somebody off. Other groups decided to just avoid the trouble altogether and retire to the ocean, where they could migrate in peace. Doing this had the added benefit of allowing their cities to become much larger. The biggest block walker, a summer settlement called Dice Malara, was about the same size as the smallest city swimmers. The largest city swimmer, which also happened to be the biggest city on the planet, was called Ingris Barbero. It was a winter settlement that reached nearly from the water's surface to the sea floor, restricting its migration path to following a single deep-sea trench that ran from the North to South Pole. Ingris was a wildly popular tourist destination for nomads and all-years alike, which made Madame Ridge, the vessel's hostess, incredibly wealthy and influential. So influential, in fact, that she was able to make Ingris the planet's official capital city. This was to the great annoyance of the all-years. The botanists, of course, colonized many other planets as well, such as Gennu, a planet whose gravity was nearly twice as powerful than that of Neuest. This meant that the botanists, who had initially modified for lower gravity, would need to adapt their body plan once again. Aside from becoming shorter and stockier, they also changed their tails into a sort of third leg, making them tripedal. This did, however, give them a somewhat awkward walking gait, and made it especially difficult to run. To rectify this, they modified their already long ring and pinky fingers into 4 extra legs, giving them 7 in total, which aided in galloping more quickly. Similar to their ancestors before them, the septipeds continued pushing for further advancements in biotechnology. One example of this advancement was the tublos, a large amphibian-esque creature with a transparent and water-sealed mouth. They were used to explore the depths of Gennu's many lakes and seas, being directed like a horse by trained jockeys. But unlike a horse, it was controlled from the inside, with the pilot staying in the creature's mouth, using an intricate series of tendons to control the beast. Another advanced form of biotechnology was the long-haired winiper, a mammalian creature that could be quote-unquote milked for a variety of different liquids, from biodiesel to medicine to acid used for mining. However, many of their creations were not so strictly pragmatic. Take the lyre, a multi-headed creature that was essentially a living instrument, being able to perform a truly impressive range of notes with its several mouths. Not only could it instinctually conduct original pieces itself, its symphonies could also be controlled using the quills on its back. While the lives of the previously mentioned creatures were usually long and pleasant, being treated as pets or valuable livestock, the following creatures were not as lucky. Over time, genetic modification as a medium of art became very common. While this had sprung up occasionally in other cultures, it was typically very niche and often outlawed. On Gennu, however, it became surprisingly common, and strange, abstract creatures were made purely for the purpose of being looked at. One particularly famous piece was the Man in the Glass, which was especially impressive on account of the reflective surface inside the specimen's shell, which was completely organic and hard to pull off. Most of these tapestries, as they were called, were not made with a reproductive system, and had a very short lifespan of only a few months. This meant that the public had a very limited window to view the newest tapestries, and often went well out of their way to do so, contributing to the art's popularity. There were, of course, other genetic offshoots of the botanists as well, such as the Highland Stilts, a group of towering figures adapted to live in their planet's low gravity and thick atmosphere. Or the Luminites, who escaped the sun-baked surface of their homeworld by retreating into its frigid underwater caves, where they used bioluminescent spores to see in the dark. However, the status quo of all these various post-humans would soon be shattered, as the people of the solar system left their homeworlds to reintroduce themselves to their long-lost cousins.